guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to go through some of the trades that I took this week. So I took a total of 4 trades and I only traded 4 days out of the week. I only traded Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I did not take any trades on Friday. I didn't really like the price action on futures Friday overall throughout the day. It seemed a little bit choppy in the morning, so I decided not to trade for the rest of the day at all. But the 4 trades that I did take this week were all winning trades, so I'll go through 1 or 2 of them with you. Really, I want to hone in a little bit on Bookmap and how I utilize Bookmap with some of these trades and kind of what to look out for on Bookmap and order flow to give you a little bit of an edge when you are entering and exiting your positions, how I utilize futures with it. And then just overall my thought process, my trading plan for these trades. And yeah, I'll go through that with you guys. I'll go through and show you the trades in Discord as well as my TraderSync. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I just want to show you guys on the 12th. We did trade live on Voice. I was looking at SPX puts below 56.20 if ES were to clear 56.25. I ended up entering SPX puts at 644, scaling out at 648, and then scaling out again at 656 and locking my runners at 741. So this is all Pacific time because I am on the West Coast. So obviously 9:48 and so on and so forth. It's 3 hours behind. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at what everything was doing at that time. If we go ahead and look at SPX, you can see that SPX had gapped up. So it had a gap to fill from 56.25 down to around 55.71. So really decent sized gap to the downside. So I was looking to catch the gap to the downside. Now I was looking for SPX puts below 56.20 as ES cleared at 56.25. And the reason why I didn't take it at 56.25 and the reason why I didn't want to take SPX at 56.25 instead of 56.20 was because I wanted to see ES also clear. And what I was looking for on ES was that ES had an intraday trend line. So if we look here, this is the swing low. It started a trend. This was in the pre-market after hours. This is the swing low of the trend sitting around 55.75. Makes a move up, pulls back. That's the first touch. Makes another move up, pulls back, second touch, third touch. So this is a 3-touch intraday trend line, a high probability setup on ES. So what I was waiting for is for ES to not only clear the trend line, but also clear the 56.25 level. That is where the trend line was sitting. I always watch futures on the 5-minute time frame, and I watch SPX and SPY on the 2-minute time frame. So my entries and exits on SPX are always happening on the 2-minute time frame, and I'm monitoring ES and NASDAQ on the 5-minute time frame. The reason why I monitor ES and NASDAQ on the 5-minute time frame is that I personally believe that if the trend is a really strong trend, you'll see it on the 5-minute. With futures on the 2-minute, you can get shaken out a little bit, or it can be very volatile. And sometimes you'll see that the trend is starting on the 2-minute, but overall on the 5-minute, it's not a strong trend. So I just personally like to watch futures on the 5-minute just to validate that it is a very strong trend either to the upside or downside. Go ahead and look. This is the 9:30 candle on ES futures. Please ignore the time up here. It's set to Central Time for some reason. But this is the 9:30 open candle on ES futures. And you can see that right at open, ES was breaking the trend line, breaking its VWAP, and breaking 56.25. And you can see that this is the 8:30 candle on SPX. So we did get a little bit of a move up, but not a strong trend, reversed, and then started to get into the gap fill on SPX. Now, another reason why I wanted to wait for 56.20 to clear on SPX is because I wanted SPX below that 9 EMA before I look to take puts. So I always like to see SPX below that 9 EMA if I'm going to take puts, or above the 9 EMA if I'm going to take calls. So ES started to break 56.25 at around 8:30 into the 8:35 candle. When that 8:35 candle opened up, it opened below the 56.25 level, and we can see, I'm sorry, 9:35, I apologize. And then we can see that the 9:44 candle on SPX opened below 56.20. So that is exactly when I entered SPX puts, is at 9:44. Once that candle, this candle here on the 2-minute, this candle broke, ES was breaking VWAP and 56.25. On this 2-minute candle open at 9:44 is when I entered SPX puts. I entered the 56.20 put on SPX. Go ahead and take a look. My initial targets on this were 56.05, 5600, and then the final targets were 55.90, 55.80, and then the end of the gap at 55.71. So even though SPX had a huge gap to fill to the downside, You still always want to make sure that you have profit targets because it can sometimes fill the gap all the way or it'll fill it halfway. So you just want to be prepared for it to potentially bounce depending on what you see on futures. So as we get the move down here, you can see that it wasn't the strongest trend down. We did get a few pullbacks here. On the first move down here, it cleared 56.10 and 56.05, 56.10 and 56.05 and 5600 being my initial targets. And you can see that this candle right here touched right close to that 56.05 level and wasn't fully able to clear. On this 2-minute candle, that is when I scaled out of my SPX at 9:48. Was when this candle pushed into my first profit target of 56.05. So I scaled out 80% of my position here on this 15-point move down on SPX as it touched my first profit target. My stop loss on what I had left on SPX was 56.20. Now you can see that on this candle, we did pull back to that 56.20 level. But if you see here, it never held above 56.20. So whenever I have a stop loss, if I've already scaled out a majority of my initial position, I always wait for my stock to hold above my stop loss, because what can happen here is that market makers may hit a lot of stop triggers, and then it ends up moving in the direction that you had anticipated. So I always wait for the stock to actually hold above or below my stop loss before I exit the position. So for this specific play, exited 80% here, 56.20 ended up being my stop on the 20% I had left. So you can see that once it pulled back, came right down. Another reason why I was okay with holding this position is if we go ahead and look at this 10 a.m. candle here on 10 a.m. candle here on ES futures, you can see that on the 5-minute, ES was a little indecisive. So neither buyers or sellers were in control of the overall market. And you can see that in this 5-minute time frame, we have a little bit of a doji candle, and ES retested that VWAP level. So it was still holding below VWAP. ES's VWAP was my stop on the overall play. SPX was just a little bit more volatile, broke above my stop, but overall still held. So I was comfortable holding that 20% through the pullback. Ended up making the rest of the leg down here, and then I scaled out 90% of my position at 9:56 on this candle here as it pushed through 5600, which was my second profit target. 5605 and 5600 were my initial two profit targets, and it cleared both. Ended up exiting 90% of my position towards the end of this candle. And then I held my runners. I dropped my stop on my runners to 56.10. If we go ahead and take a look here, as we pull back, look at the 56.10. This was my stop. Neither one of these candles held above 56.10. Okay, and if we look at ES futures here, the overall trend, I'm sorry, I'm on the 15-minute. I apologize. It's similar on the 5-minute, just see a little bit cleaner, but if we look at ES futures overall, holding below that 9 EMA, holding below VWAP. So there's really no reason for me to exit my runners on the pullback, because I always pay attention to ES and the NASDAQ. And as long as they're holding under that 9 EMA, the trend is still in place. Overall, on the 5-minute, it was still in a downtrend, no reversal in sight. So I was comfortable holding it. As we can see, SPX went back and retested 56.10. Never held above 56.10, so I continued to hold this position. Yes, so 10:41 is when I exited the rest of my position, which is this candle here, as it pushed into the end of that gap fill. Okay? So first target 56.05, scaled 80%. Second target 5600, scaled out 90%. And then I held my runners with a stop of 56.10 into the end of the gap fill on SPX, which was my final profit target. And it ended up filling the entire gap on SPX out of ES's trend line break, trending down below EMAs. And then I'm going to also show you guys what I was watching on ES's Bookmap, which helped me hold through these pullbacks, okay? So if we go ahead and look at ES's Bookmap, so this is the overall Bookmap on ES here. Now, you can see that once it broke through this 5600, so this was the level on 5600 that I was struggling to break through on. Once it was able to break through that 5600, you can see how sellers have entire control of ES. We can see that on every pullback. Let me see if I can zoom in here. We can see that on every pullback, there's not a lot of aggressive buyers stepping in. You're not getting huge buy orders coming in. So that just signifies that it is a pullback. Overall, you can see here that sellers are still in control of this position. You can see huge sell orders continue to come in as ES clears every single level that there's buyers sitting. You can see that overall the trend is still bearish, and you still have huge sell orders coming in on ES. It's not until around 55.70 area, 55.75, that we get a little bit more of a significant pullback. And you can see the difference between the orders coming in here and the orders coming in here on these pullbacks, okay? Not as significantly bigger orders previously versus the orders that are coming in on ES at this level here. My final profit target on ES on this play was 55.50. You can see that 55.50 here had an enormous number of buyers sitting here in comparison to the previous levels. ES's 55.50 was the final profit target. This is something that you want to look out for when you're looking at Bookmap. That will be really helpful. And it's very similar to how you're looking at your price action on your charts. Looking at Bookmap and looking at the price action on your charts is really similar. So if we see here, usually when a stock is trending down, it's making lower highs. So that just signifies that buying pressure is getting weaker and weaker. The stock is continuing to make a move down. It is still in a downtrend. Similarly, on Bookmap, you see the same thing. We have a level of support here, okay, where there's buyers sitting at 55.60. We bounce. That's the first bounce, first test. Wasn't able to clear. Comes back down, tests again. On that second bounce, would you look at that? It's a lower high, okay? Less buying pressure stepping in. Third bounce, would you look at that? Lower high, less buying pressure stepping in. Comes down again. On that fourth and final test, you can see that we get a huge sell order come in, fills the 55.60. When it pulls back, it's still in a lower high, and then finally clears. And you can see when it pulls back, we don't get a lot of buyers step in. It's not huge buy orders that are stepping in. Sellers are still in control. It's still a lower high. If we go ahead and draw on this, you can see, whoops. If we go ahead and draw on this, you can still see overall, it's a lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. It's trending down on Bookmap. Okay, so it's signifying that heavy buyers are not continuously stepping in. The overall trend is still down. ES's trend on the chart, you also want to see that it is still trending down. And overall, once it filled this 55.60 level, there are no really significant levels. We had some sitting at around these levels, but nothing too significant until 55.50. And if you look here, every time it pulled back, small pullbacks filled all the way down to 55.50 on ES futures. So the final target on ES futures was 55.50. As ES approached that 55.50, close to around 11 a.m., SPX had already filled most of the gap, but you can see that SPX ended up continuing down into 55.50 as well. So at 55.50 at 10:08, this is the 11, because it's an hour behind. So 11:05 candle. This is the 11:08 candle on SPX. We have a little bit of a hammer on SPX here, and you can see that once it bounced, wicked up on ES, and then we ended up bouncing in the market. Okay, so this is how you use Bookmap in conjunction with futures to be able to guide you to trade either SPX, SPY, or QQQ, or really anything in the market that you're in. It can really help gauge when market is going to bounce, when to enter, when to exit your position, what targets you should have on the position. Bookmap is a really, really huge factor in how I decide my profit targets and my final profit targets, especially on my runners. Even on my runners, I don't just hold my runners until whenever. No, I actually hold my runners and I have a specific profit target on those runners. For this specific play on SPX, the profit target on the runners was the end of the gap, with ES's 55.50 being the end of the target for ES futures. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully you guys got a better understanding of Bookmap. If you guys want to see a more in-depth tutorial on Bookmap, I do have another video posted. But if you have any questions on Bookmap, I can post another video as well. If you have any questions on this trade or any of the trades that I took, go ahead and comment them down below. And if you have any video suggestions or anything else you guys would like to see, also comment that down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.